What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast dedicated to the digital agency owner that wants to scale faster and hear amazing stories from agency owners all over the world. And on today's episode, I have an amazing guest who is like many of you. You probably have grown your agency and had one huge client, and then that one huge client leave, and it just decimate your agency where you have to go get a job, or good gosh, who knows? But they've built everything up through the ashes and built an amazing company with over 75 employees. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode. Hey, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
My name's Andrew Greenstein. I am a co-founder and co-CEO, I'll say, of SF AppWorks, a digital agency. I run it with my partner, Darius, who's our CTO. And I heard your bumper, and we have been through a couple of situations through the course of our agency, which is now 10 years old, where we've really been on the precipice of the cliff looking down, and it's a scary time. And you don't know what's going to happen, but we've found a way to get through it. And I'm sure this is something that a lot of people will go through running an agency. So I'm happy to share what I know about that experience, and hopefully it can help someone out get through one of those tough times.
Awesome. Well, before we jump into that, how did you start the agency? Are you an accidental agency owner, or did you always have visions of starting an agency?
No, I am an accidental agency owner. I was also, I guess, an accidental entrepreneur, even though I grew up in Silicon Valley. But I wanted to be a writer and a musician, and I went to college trying to pursue those things, and got afraid of my career outlook from there. And I decided to go to law school, which to me was like a coward's way out in a way. Because I wasn't passionate about
that's a very different shift, like starving artist to lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it now. I was afraid of money. I mean, I was afraid about not having money, and I made a choice based on that, even though it wasn't what I was passionate about. Actually, I loved law school. It taught me a new way of thinking, and I met some great people, but I knew my heart wasn't in it, and I was trying to figure out what to do and how to break back into music. And my older brother, who had been a lawyer turned entrepreneur, said, "Why don't you start a company?" And strangely, it had never dawned on me before that I could just do that someone could just start a company. So I did start a startup, a music platform, back in 2008, and we were able to raise a little bit of funding and get some cool marketing. We got to partner with Linkin Park and MySpace, which was clinging to survival and taking big risks. And we tried to do really cool things, but ultimately we couldn't get the product market fit. After 3 years, we had to shut the company down. And Darius and I were sitting around in the office saying, okay, we want to do another startup, but we don't know what it is. We need to buy some time. And we were a little burned by the raising money process. And we thought, okay, let's start with cash flow. How can we get cash flow? And our plan was, why don't we assemble a team of developers and designers, and why don't we start by doing other people's startups and helping them out. We were huge fans of like lean methodology and the agile approach. And we're like, we can just focus on this and help startups and organizations build websites and apps. And, we'll do it for a few months. And once we kind of get our bearing, we'll launch our own startup again. And that was over 10 years ago. We have not launched our own startup again. We've dabbled with building internal products, kind of a mistake. But here we are 10 years later, running an agency, 75 people doing awesome work for big organizations and small organizations and entrepreneurs, and really having a lot of fun.
That's great. Now let's kind of transition into the teaser that I told everybody about. Like, walk me through kind of where you were when you had this big client that was a majority of your business. Like, when we say a majority of your business, is this 90%, 80%? What number?
I'm going to give you a 2-for-1, actually, because it happened to us twice. In the very beginning, in the first 2 years, I know we don't learn our lessons sometimes. In the first 2 years, like a lot of agencies, we needed a foundational client to get started. So while we were exploring the idea of building for other people, A buddy of mine was trying to get a sports startup off the ground, and he asked me to come help him look at agencies. And after meeting with several of the agencies and being frustrated by how much they just kept saying, yes, that's a great idea. Yes, that's a great idea. When I felt there clearly needed to be a lot of idea development around that and testing and iteration, I said, why don't you let us help you with this? And so he hired our team, and we built the first application, a marathon training application called SportMe. And for the first 2 years, they were our foundational client. So we picked up some other web work. We helped a former writing professor of mine launch a publishing company, the Sager Group. We built some websites, and we thought we were doing fine. We grew to about 10 people, and as happens, that startup failed to secure a next round of funding. The cash dried up, and when cash dries up, things go south quickly. So we were kind of left without that one client, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And I remember having lunch with my co-founder, and he came to me excited and said, "I think I found us a client." And I said, "Oh my God, thank God, because we really have 2 weeks left of cash in the bank. What's the client?" And he said, "It's my wife, and she'll pay us to build anything we want." And I just looked at him and I said, that is very sweet, but that's not a business. And so that's how we decided, we need to get day jobs. And we went and each got jobs. He got a job at AARP. I got a job at a startup accelerator called Plug and Play. We kept working in the evenings and in the mornings, trying to keep things going, taking little projects here or there. And we actually managed to turn both of those jobs into clients about a year later. And they supported us as we rejoined full-time in SF AppWorks. And one of those clients, AARP, became our next super client. They built up a huge platform called Life Reimagined that I'll pause for a second if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll jump into that part.
No, go for it. It's very, very interesting. People don't want to hear from me.
All right. So we're back in the game now. We've got this big client. It actually started off as 2 developer project. So oftentimes, get your foot in the door, right? The hardest thing about business relationships is you need to get a start. There's so much noise, but if you can get your foot in the door, of course, if you can do a really good job, and if you enjoy the work, I think that's important too. Then there's a lot of opportunity. So we were working alongside another very large agency called RGA, and they had a huge amount of people on the team. We came in as the sort of upstart group that was working alongside with them with everything to prove, working our butts off, certainly more affordable from an hourly rate as a large agency. And over the course of the next 4 years, we built that team alone from, I think 2 developers to around 30 developers. And that also gave us an opportunity to grow the rest of our team. We had cash flow all of a sudden and enough of it to invest within an organization. And we knew we needed to grow our team. We needed to grow our services. A lot of that growth was within the AARP project, but a lot of it was also in other areas we were interested in exploring. It allowed us, having a big client like AARP, allowed us to pick up a lot of interesting work. Some of it in the age tech space, where we found a lot of interesting opportunities, others just in other spaces. And life was good for the next 5 years. And we thought we had a handle on things. And as we grew quickly, we thought, look, we're succeeding here, we're growing, everything's fine. But what we didn't realize is that because we were growing on the back of one super client, we weren't building our sales and marketing processes up. We weren't growing in an organic way. And so we were blind to the fact that when AARP decided to shut down this project, we were once again left without a stable income, and no idea how we were going to support our now 40 people in the company.
So what happened then? This is the second time. Obviously, it's when you're riding the wave, like it's exciting. I mean, like you're just cruising along. You're thinking this will never stop, and then the wave just slams you. So obviously, did you have any kind of thoughts of going, man, we got a lot of revenue tied up into ARP. We really need to work on these things, or were you just too busy? Like, what were you saying to yourself, if you can remember? Because I always, hear, because these types of things happen to us, and I see it happen all the time where you're just too busy to do anything else. You're just trying to service and make this client happy, and then they'll fire you on a dime.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're unhealthy, right? And you're like, I need to get healthier. I need to exercise and I need to eat. You're very aware of the problem. There's just no sense of urgency. So we knew that we were way too leveraged on one client and we knew that we needed to diversify, but we didn't know that we were going to have a heart attack the next day. And so when that heart attack came, that's when we were like, oh no, why hadn't we been preparing more aggressively? And it does come down to, prioritizing important work versus urgent work. You've seen that box where it's like important, not important, urgent, not important. And we know we do urgent and important things and we don't do non-urgent, not important. But there's a battle between urgent, not important and important, not urgent. So we had spent too much time on the urgent, not important task to focus on that very important task of diversifying.
So there's two parts to, I guess, my next question. One is, how did you climb out, right? And then what are you doing now to avoid that happening again? Like, especially for the listeners listening in and going, hey, if the majority of your income for the agency is tied up into this, what do they need to do? Like, how can we create urgency? And what do they need to do in order to set up the right systems?
Yeah, so I'll talk first about how we crawled out of it, and then I can reflect on maybe what we could have done better. Our first and biggest decision was what to do with a decent sized pile of cash we had in our bank. There was a real question mark of whether we should just shut down and walk away. Take what we had and say let's say job well done and move on to the next thing, or do we take all that money, which we estimated it could buy us about 6 months of payroll, and do we reinvest it and just hope that all of our plans to get out of this hole will work? And we really loved our team. We still love our team. And we felt like we had spent so long assembling this team and we were just getting started. So we said, let's just put all the money back in and, let's figure it out. We're going all in on this one. So we did that and we came up with two plans. The first plan is, okay, let's get sales and marketing going as quickly as possible. We ended up hiring an agency to help us out with sales outreach and try to ramp up that activity. But we knew it was going to take some time. So we said, okay, and we have all these resources available, these people that are willing to work on cool things. Why don't we try to build an internal type of startup, something that we might be able to fund? Because in 6 months, if we can build a good proof of concept, maybe we can go the investor route. So we had a two-sided plan, which we thought was pretty smart. And neither of those plans worked. But
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question. Like, how did they work? Because especially when you hire someone to do sales, is usually they never work. So, what would you have done different, or why didn't some of these plans work?
yeah, the whole sales outreach thing, it's a mixed bag. It's a lot of noise and it's a pretty aggressive way to get clients, and you're just throwing your hat into a sea of other hats. It's a weird analogy, but anyway, it's a numbers game, but it's also like if you happen to get someone at the right place in the right time with the right message, then it works. Like if you've ever really needed a service and someone just happens to catch you with the exact service framed in the right way that makes sense to you, it can work. And especially in the software business, one introduction can lead to a long relationship. And that sales team did actually deliver one introduction that is still a current client. So we're happy about that. But it takes a long time, right? The sales cycle is over a year because you still have to build a relationship. So the way we ended up getting out of it, and we didn't realize this at the time, but the third part of our plan that wasn't explicitly part of our plan was that we needed to buy time to let things happen. And, time is sometimes all you need for things to turn. The longer you can stay alive, the longer you give yourself an opportunity for something to happen, even if it's not what you planned for. And so that's why, whenever we're talking to people about building an app or a website, running a business in general, you need to stretch your cash flow out as long as you possibly can. So what ended up happening is all the people that left the shutdown project from AARP about 6 months later landed in new spots. One landed at a large retirement community, national retirement community. Another one landed at West Elm, and others landed in several places. And they started calling us about 6 months later. And that one super client turned into 4 or 5 less super clients, mid-sized clients, and that allowed us to both crawl out of that hole. We had the resources ready because we had kept the team on standby, and we were able to re-engage and then build new relationships with their new companies.
So did you? So you guys kept everybody. Looking back, and let's say looking back at not having these other super clients contact you, would you have if you were advising me and this was happening to me, would you say, hey, you got to do some layoffs in order to build more cash, and then you need to do something else other than hire this sales agency in order to what would you do different?
Well, I mean, it's so much easier to advise someone else because you just tell them to do the hard thing. Oh yeah, reduce your team for sure. That is the smart thing to do, the rational thing to do, and and it probably was the right thing to do back then. Reduce and try to find the whatever percent of the team you can keep that's most critical and can work together as a team, and then rebuild slowly. What we did was a very risky decision that happened to pay off, and I don't know, it's probably a coin flip. It might have been terrible. So I think, yeah, you got to reduce the team in that situation, if you're doing it, and that's hard. But another lesson I also learned is in letting people go. In my first startup, I agonized over this decision to shut down, to let one of my um, senior people go, and one of my co-founders said, "Hey, sometimes it's better for them if you let them go. You think you're doing this for you, but sometimes you're actually hurting them by not letting them go." And that turned out to be absolutely true. I waited too long, and by the time I finally did make that decision, when I had no other choice, it had been too long. They had lost some other opportunities. They had invested more and more into this sinking project. And I realized it was actually pretty selfish not to have just been transparent and straightforward. And it's helped shape one of my values now, which is in communication and transparency.
Yeah, take it from someone that's been fired from almost every single job I've ever had. It's better for them.
So you're getting noticed, though. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I always, looking back, I always figured I never liked to quit, but I wanted to sabotage it so people would fire me rather than me quit because I didn't like it.
Yeah, or affect change because, hey, I got nothing to lose at this point. I'm just gonna
Exactly.
go for it.
Exactly. Well, so transitioning to where you guys are at now, what are you guys doing in order to make sure this doesn't happen for the third time? For example, I know whenever we would get a big client, I'd be like, okay, well, that's great. Especially if they're like this monster client, they come in at like 50% of revenue, like, cool. We're going to anticipate them going away at any time. And we're going to work our ass off to get another client to make that 25. Or what are you guys doing right now?
So we definitely address the urgency situation, where we look at our clients and our revenue and our expected contract end dates every week, and we strategize every week. We have a separate meeting that's just focused on where's our risks, who's our most likely client that might bail, who's our most likely client that might grow. When we lose a client, we're like, okay, how many can we afford to lose? And it's not like you can just will a new client to come into the picture, but you can at least keep urgency, dedicate time to planning for that. And if you are down to, hey, we have one client, and if they go, they're not going to, we're not going to survive this, then that might be a time to be proactive and start reducing headcount um, or asking for help. Actually, our third crisis was when the pandemic hit. And that was a situation where for 3 months, almost every single client went on hold, and we didn't know what we were going to do in that situation, like a lot of people. And and what ended up happening is, we waited it out again for 3 months, and the pendulum swung. Um, until we are where we are now, where there's this massive investment in digital growth. But every time one of these crises happens, uh, it is a combination of, can you buy yourself time, but also, what do I need to prepare for? Am I giving enough time to the problem? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I like how that you guys are patient and you guys don't just freak out like, so many people, and they kind of pull back. I think you are patient in order to make a decision of what you guys need to do. And I think more people need to do that. So, and that's why you guys are at where you're at. And I think if you do a great work and you help people out, which is apparent to you losing that one client, but then all those people coming back to you and turning those into. So congrats on the success.
Yeah, thank you. It's I guess it can be fleeting. We did cross our 10-year anniversary recently, and in that process, we looked back and said, I bet every company has these 2 or 3 huge moments when it can all slip away, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you also don't know if it's going to be good or bad for you. So it's kind of one of those life lessons where you're like, well, we might as well try to do what we want to do. We might as well say what we feel like saying, and just hope that resonates with people. And if not, we'll have to figure out our next plan.
Yeah. Well, this has all been amazing, Andrew. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the audience listening in?
No, I think you were spot on in focusing on one problem we had to overcome that I think is relevant to probably every agency. So thanks for having me and allowing me to share that experience.
Awesome. And what's the website people can go and check out the agency?
sfappworks.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andrew, for coming on the show. And for everyone listening out, go check them out. And if you guys want to be around other amazing agency owners where you can hear their stories and they can see the things you might not be doing the right way and be in the best agency mastermind out there, I want you all to go to thedigitalAgencyElite.com. This is exclusively for agency owners that want to grow faster, that are well over the million mark and wanting to take it to the next level and create the freedom and the impact that you guys have always wanted when you started. Maybe sometimes you just get a little busy. So make sure you go to digitalagencyelite.com. And until next time, have a swank day.